Evelyn Cross was 56. For 14 years, she worked as a cashier in Gary, Indiana. She made just $14.80 an hour. At 8 p.m., a 7'1" giant stood at her register. His card was declined for $43.70. The giant looked confused. Evelyn did not recognize the man. He was Shaquille O'Neal. He was a basketball legend worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Evelyn paid the $43.70 out of her own pocket. But the next morning, her boss gave her a harsh written warning. On one hand, strict company rules threatened her only job. This was the job she used to raise her grandson. On the other hand, the giant offered her a life-changing job. He wanted her to be his operations director. What class pressure and doubts will Evelyn face before she can grab this ticket to change her fate? The morning came in gray and cold over Gary, Indiana. The clock on the wall read 10:47 a.m. Evelyn stood between two old shelves, stacking cans of soup. Her back still ached from a 12-hour night shift. She had not slept more than 4 hours. Her knees popped softly every time she bent down. The store smelled like old bleach and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above her head. Her phone sat in her apron pocket. It had one text message from her bank. Her balance read $14.32. That was all the money she had left in the world. She stared at that number for a long moment. $14.32 had to last until Friday. She did the math in her head one more time, just to be sure. There was simply no extra room anywhere in that number. On the kitchen counter at home, an envelope waited. It was the electric bill. It was 3 months late. The total was $385.50. She had hidden that envelope under a stack of mail. Looking at it made her stomach twist into a tight knot. She had not opened it again since that first day. She already knew exactly how much she owed. Her grandson Leo needed $1,240.50 for his new school semester. Evelyn had no idea where that money would come from. Leo was a good boy. He never asked for much, and that made her ache even more inside. She looked down at her own boots. The left one had a long crack across the sole. Water came in every time it rained. She had tried gluing the crack twice already. The glue never held longer than a single shift. She kept meaning to buy a new pair, but new boots cost almost $40. That was money she simply did not have to spare. She told herself she would skip lunch again. She needed to save every dollar for milk for Leo. Her stomach growled quietly as she folded another empty cardboard box. She ignored the sound like she always did. Mitchell Vance walked past her aisle. He held a Starbucks cup in one hand. He tapped his fingers on the counter near her register. His shoes were shiny and new. His coffee alone cost more than her hourly wage. "Evelyn, I don't care how kind you feel," he said. "If the register comes up short tonight, it comes out of your $14.80. Evelyn said nothing. She lowered her head and gripped her cleaning rag tighter. Shame sat heavy on her chest. She had worked here for 14 years. She had never once stolen a cent. But yesterday, she gave a stranger $43.70 from her own wallet. Now she wondered if that single act of kindness would cost her everything. If she lost this job, she and Leo would have nowhere else to go. There was no other safety net waiting for them in Gary. No family lived close by anymore. No savings sat hidden anywhere for emergencies like this one. She kept asking herself the same question all morning. Was helping a stranger the biggest mistake of her life? She wiped down the counter slowly, over and over, just to keep her hands busy. The question would not leave her alone. An old customer walked up with a small basket of bread and eggs. Evelyn forced a tired smile and rang up the items. The woman counted out crumpled dollar bills, one by one, from a small coin purse. Evelyn waited patiently, the way she always did. She had learned long ago never to rush a customer who was counting pennies. She understood that feeling better than anyone in this whole town. When the woman left, Evelyn glanced at the clock again. Only a few more hours remained, until her shift finally ended. Her feet throbbed inside her cracked boots. Standing all day on hard tile floors had worn down her body over the years. She thought about Leo waiting for her at home after school. He always asked the same simple question every evening. He would ask if she was hungry, even though he knew she rarely ate enough. That small kindness, from from a child always broke her heart a little. At 3:15 that same afternoon, Evelyn's phone buzzed inside her apron. The screen showed a strange number. The area code was from Indianapolis. She almost let it ring out. Her hands were full of paper towels and a mop bucket. She finally answered on the fourth ring. A woman's voice came through, calm and polished. "Hello, is this Evelyn Cross?" the woman asked. "My name is Sarah Jenkins. I work for Apex Retail Group." Evelyn frowned and wiped her hands on her apron. She had never heard of this company before in her life. She glanced around the store, half expecting a hidden camera somewhere. Nothing about this call made any sense to her. "We would like to invite you to an interview," Sarah said. "It would be at our main office in Indianapolis tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for a regional operations advisor position." Evelyn almost laughed out loud at the register. She thought someone was playing a cruel joke on her. "I think you have the wrong person," Evelyn said. "I'm just a night cashier in a small, poor town." "We don't have the wrong person," Sarah answered gently. "We already paid $120 onto your bus card for travel." Evelyn's hands started to shake a little. Confusion and a tiny flicker of hope rose up inside her chest together. She pressed the phone harder against her ear, afraid the call might suddenly disconnect. Part of her wanted this to be real, so badly it hurt. Why would a giant company call a tired cashier from Gary? What could they possibly want from a worn-out woman like her? She hung up the phone, but her mind kept spinning. Who was really behind this strange and sudden call? She slipped the phone back into her apron and stared blankly at the shelf in front of her. For a moment, she forgot what she had even been stocking. She glanced toward the front window, watching cars pass on the wet street outside. None of this felt like real life to her. Could a company like that really care about someone like her? Or was this just some strange mistake about to be corrected? She tried to focus on her work again, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that one phone call. The number $120 echoed strangely in her mind. By 6:30 that evening, Evelyn found Mitchell Vance in his small office. She asked for one single day off work. She kept her voice polite and careful, the way she always spoke to him. She explained there was an interview opportunity in Indianapolis. Mitchell let out a short, dry laugh. He tossed yesterday's disciplinary paper back onto his desk. "You want a day off to interview for some big boss job?" he said. "Evelyn, look at yourself. You're 56 years old. You're wearing a faded $10 coat from a thrift store." He leaned back in his chair, his voice turning colder. "Step outside this town, and nobody will even look at you twice. Go ahead. Don't bother coming back here either." Evelyn stood frozen by the door. She felt her face grow hot, with shame and anger at once. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck somewhere deep in her throat. Years of swallowing her pride had taught her silence instead. That night, she stood in front of the cracked bathroom mirror at home. She studied every wrinkle and every gray hair. The bathroom light flickered slightly above her head. The mirror's edge had a long crack running through one corner. She did not see a future operations director staring back at her. She saw a tired old cashier who did not belong anywhere else. With a shaking thumb, she typed a short message to Sarah Jenkins. She wrote that she would not be coming to the interview. She read the message 3 times before sending it. Each word felt heavier than the last. She pressed send and set the phone face down on the counter. A heavy silence settled over the small kitchen. Deep poverty leaves a mark that never fully fades away. It tells you, again and again, that you do not deserve more. Evelyn felt that mark now, pressing down on her chest like a stone. She felt she simply did not belong in that shiny, faraway world. Was this refusal the final door, closing on her only real chance? Had she just thrown away the one shot to save her grandson's future? She climbed into bed without eating dinner. Sleep did not come easily that night. She lay staring at the ceiling, listening to rain begin tapping against the window. Somewhere far away, a dog barked twice and went quiet. She thought about her own mother, long gone now, who had also worked hard her whole life. Maybe this kind of struggle simply ran in her family. She pulled the thin blanket up to her chin and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. At 8:12 that night, cold rain began falling hard over Gary. The store stood empty and quiet under flickering lights. Rain hammered against the front windows in steady waves. Evelyn sat alone behind the register, listening to the storm outside. The glass door swung open with a soft chime. A massive figure stepped through, ducking his head low to clear the frame. He stood 7 feet 1 inch tall. He wore the same plain gray hoodie from the night before. Water dripped slowly from the edges of his sleeves onto the clean tile floor. He moved carefully, the way someone moves when their body feels too large for any room. He walked slowly to the counter where Evelyn stood. He placed a small envelope on top of it. Inside was exactly $43.70 in cash. Folded beside it was a crisp $100 bill. "I'm returning what you spent on me yesterday," he said quietly. "And this extra is interest for your kindness." Evelyn pushed the $100 bill back across the counter. "I only helped you because you needed it right then," she said. "I don't take extra money." The big man looked straight into her tired eyes. His deep voice stayed gentle and slow. "My mother used to stand in bread lines back in Newark," he said. "People once turned her away over 50 cents she didn't have." He paused, his eyes drifting toward the rain outside the window. The memory clearly still weighed on him after all these years. "When you helped me yesterday," he continued, "I saw my own mother standing right there in you. Don't let people who never went hungry decide what you are worth," he said softly. "Indianapolis is still waiting for you tomorrow." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know I said no?" she asked quietly. He only offered a small, knowing smile in response. He did not explain how he knew. Evelyn felt his words land somewhere deep and old inside her chest. This stranger seemed to understand pain she had never spoken about out loud. Who was this giant man, really, underneath that plain gray hoodie? Why did his words carry so much strange and quiet power over her? She did not sleep much that night. She kept turning his words over in her mind, again and again. She sat by the window for a long while after he left. The rain had finally slowed to a soft, steady drizzle. She thought about her own years of struggle, all the nights she had gone without enough food. She wondered if pride had kept her from many chances before this one. Maybe this giant stranger was right about something important. Maybe she had let other people's harsh words decide her own worth for far too long. She picked up her phone again, her thumb hovering over Sarah Jenkins's number. This time, she did not hesitate as long. By 5 o'clock the next morning, Evelyn packed a small bag in the dark. She set her old alarm clock for 4:45 a.m. She moved quietly, so she would not wake Leo sleeping down the hall. She left a short note on the kitchen table for him. The Greyhound bus left the station at 5:45 sharp. Evelyn wore a faded blue blazer she had bought 5 years ago for $15. She sat near the back window, clutching her worn bag tightly on her lap. Her reflection looked pale and nervous in the dark glass. She watched the flat fields of Indiana roll past the window. Slowly, tall glass towers began rising up ahead of her. Telephone poles blurred past one after another along the highway. Evelyn rested her forehead briefly against the cool glass. The closer the bus got to the city, the faster her heart seemed to beat. Everything around her looked bigger and shinier than anything in Gary. The Apex Retail Group headquarters stood 45 floors high. Sunlight bounced hard off its smooth glass walls. Evelyn stepped off the bus, gripping the worn handle of her old fake leather bag. The noise of the city felt like it was pressing in from every side. Car horns blared from every direction. Crowds of people in suits rushed past her without a single glance. She walked through the building's spinning glass doors. A security guard looked her up and down with sharp, careful eyes. His gaze lingered on her cracked boots for a second too long. Evelyn forced herself to stand a little taller. Her hands shook as she held out her printed interview letter. "I have a 9 o'clock appointment," she said quietly. The guard checked his clipboard, then waved her toward the elevators. She thanked him softly and walked away. She rode the elevator up to the 40th floor. Her stomach dropped with every passing level. The numbers above the door climbed steadily upward. Evelyn focused on breathing slowly to calm her racing heart. The floor up there was polished stone, smooth and gleaming under bright lights. She could see her own cracked work boots reflected in it. She tried not to look down too long. The reflection only reminded her how out of place she felt. Her heart pounded hard against her ribs the whole way down the hall. She felt like an intruder walking into a world that was never built for her. Could a poor, honest cashier really survive inside this cold tower of glass and money? Or would this place swallow her whole before lunchtime? She caught her own reflection in a wide glass wall near the elevators. For a second, she barely recognized the woman staring back. A young employee walked past holding a tablet and a paper coffee cup. He did not even glance her way as he hurried past. Everyone here seemed to move, so fast, so sure of where they belonged. Evelyn forced herself to keep walking anyway. She took a deep breath outside the conference room doors. Then she reached forward and pushed them open. Inside a wide conference room, 3 other candidates already sat waiting. Each one held a folder listing degrees from famous business schools. They wore crisp suits and expensive watches. They glanced at Evelyn's faded blazer with quiet curiosity. A man at the head of the table flipped through papers without looking up. His nameplate read Julian Drake, head of human resources. He had sharp features and a cold, practiced smile. His suit looked tailored to fit perfectly. He finally looked at Evelyn's thin file and pushed his glasses up. "Mrs. Cross, you've been a cashier for 14 years, he said. "Is counting bags of potatoes the closest thing you have to management experience?" The other candidates exchanged quiet, knowing smiles across the table. Evelyn felt her cheeks burn under the bright office lights. She gripped the edge of her chair beneath the table. She forced herself to keep her chin level. She noticed her own hands looked rougher than every other hand at that table. Years of cold registers and heavy boxes had left their mark on her skin. She did not feel ashamed of those marks anymore. They were proof of 14 honest years spent working hard for her family. Sarah Jenkins sat near the side wall, quietly taking notes. She slid a small cup of warm water toward Evelyn and gave her a small, encouraging nod. That tiny gesture felt like the only kindness in the entire room. Evelyn quietly thanked her with a small nod back. Julian leaned forward, tapping a pen against his folder. "Our Rust Belt store chain loses $12,400 every single month," he said. "Theft and unpaid debts are eating our profits alive." "The other candidates suggest AI cameras," he continued. "They also suggest cutting night shift staff completely." "What would you do, Mrs. Cross?" Evelyn sat still for a moment, her mind spinning with numbers and fear. But somewhere underneath the fear, something steady started to rise. She thought about her own cracked boots and her own empty bank account. She thought about every tired worker just like her. These men spoke about theft and layoffs like simple math on a page. They had never once stood behind a register at midnight, scared and exhausted. What answer could a tired night cashier possibly give to challenge this cold corporate logic? Could her quiet experience really stand against all their fancy theories? She remembered a night 2 winters ago when a young mother cried at her register. The woman had been short $3 for baby formula. Evelyn had quietly covered the difference herself that night, just like she always did when she could. No camera, no policy, had ever stopped that kind of small mercy. That memory steadied her hands now, more than any business textbook ever could. Evelyn slowly stood up from her chair. Her voice came out steady this time, not shaking at all. The room grew quiet as every eye turned toward her. Even Julian Drake paused his pen midair. "You want to spend $5,000 on cameras," she said, "just to catch a mother stealing a $3 carton of milk? You want to fire a $14 an hour cashier," she continued, "because she shows kindness to a struggling customer. The real loss in your stores isn't theft," she said. "It's turning every shop into a cold police station with no warmth at all." "Poor people still have pride," Evelyn said firmly. "Give them respect, and they will protect your stores like their own home." Julian Drake slammed his palm flat against the table. "This is a business, Mrs. Cross," he snapped, "not a charity organization." The other candidates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody dared to speak after that sharp exchange. Evelyn quietly accepted that she had likely just lost this entire opportunity. Her honest words went directly against every profit rule in that room. Had her bluntness just cost her the one real chance to save her grandson's future? Would she now have to walk back into that cold, empty store in Gary? A short break was called, and everyone shuffled out for coffee. Evelyn stayed seated, staring at her own rough hands. Sarah Jenkins leaned close for a moment on her way past. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "you said something nobody in this building has said in years." Evelyn nodded slowly, unsure if those words were comfort or a quiet goodbye. She folded her hands together and waited for the others to return. A large screen at the front of the room flickered to life. Julian clicked through slides until one stopped him. It showed Evelyn's old disciplinary form from Mitchell Vance's store. The line read clearly, "Used $43.70 of personal cash without authorization." Julian smirked and crossed his arms. "Mrs. Cross, you couldn't even follow the rules at a small corner store," he said. "You used your own money to cover a system error. How can we trust someone with such poor financial discipline to run an entire region?" A few candidates whispered quietly and exchanged smug glances. Evelyn pressed her rough, worn hands together tightly under the table. Her face burned, but she refused to look away from Julian's cold stare. Inside, something old and tired finally began to harden into resolve. She did not cry. She did not try to defend herself with excuses or apologies. She looked Julian Drake straight in the eyes instead. "I may lack your kind of discipline," she said, "but I do not lack basic human decency. And if I saw that same situation again tomorrow," she added, "I would still pull out my own $50 bill." A heavy silence settled over the entire room after her words. Evelyn felt something inside her settle too, calm and certain. She had reached the very edge of her own pride and patience. She was ready to walk out and hold her dignity, even if it meant going home to nothing. She slowly reached for her bag, preparing to stand and leave the room for good. Her chair scraped softly against the polished floor. She thought of Leo one last time before standing fully. She told herself she would find some other way to provide for him. Even without this job, she still had her honesty. Nobody in that room could ever take that away from her. She had survived far worse than a closed door before. She would survive this one too, somehow, the way she always had. Who would step forward now to save this falling situation? Would anyone in that cold room finally see her true worth? At exactly 10:15 a.m., the heavy wooden conference doors swung open. A massive figure stepped through, filling the entire doorway. His footsteps echoed across the quiet room. Every head slowly turned to see who had entered. He no longer wore the plain gray hoodie from the night before. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit instead. Every single person in the room shot up to their feet at once. Julian Drake bowed his head low and fast. "Chairman O'Neal," he said, his voice suddenly thin and nervous. His confident smirk from minutes earlier had completely vanished. He stood stiff and pale beside his own chair. Evelyn stared up at the towering 7'1" man in total shock. She could barely connect this powerful figure to the quiet stranger from her register. Her mind raced backward through every word he had spoken to her in the rain. None of it had hinted at who he truly was. He walked over and stood beside her chair, smiling gently down at her. "Hello, Evelyn," he said warmly. "I already got my $43.70 back yesterday. Today," he continued, "I came here to give you something far more deserving." Then he turned his sharp gaze toward Julian Drake. His warm voice dropped into something colder and firmer. "Julian, you called her undisciplined?" he said. "I see something no business school on earth can teach. I see real empathy. That is exactly why our Rust Belt stores keep failing," he said. "Because they are run by coal mines, just like yours." Julian opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, without a single word. He simply lowered his eyes toward the floor. Evelyn felt a wave of disbelief wash over her entire body. The confused stranger from last night was the chairman of this whole company. Relief and warmth filled her chest at the very same moment. Her hands finally stopped shaking for the first time all morning. What changes would this incredible new position bring to her and Leo's life? Could their long, hard struggle finally be coming to an end? Sarah Jenkins smiled warmly at her from across the room. The other three candidates quietly gathered their folders and left without a word. Shaquille O'Neal pulled out the chair beside Evelyn and sat down gently. "Let's talk about your new role," he said, his voice calm and steady. By that afternoon, a black Escalade waited downstairs to drive Evelyn home. The company had arranged the ride themselves, no charge at all. The leather seats felt strange and soft beneath her tired body. She kept glancing out the tinted windows, half expecting to wake up from a dream. She sat quietly in the back seat, holding her new contract envelope. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the printed numbers inside. Her new salary read $135,000 a year. It was more money than she had ever imagined earning in her entire life. She read the number again and again, as if it might change before her eyes. It never did. The contract also showed something else important. Her overdue rent debt of $4,217.83 had already been paid in full by the company. She pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to hold back sudden tears. Years of fear seemed to lift off her shoulders all at once. The car pulled up outside her small, worn rental house in Gary. Evelyn stepped out and walked straight through the front door. The porch light flickered weakly above the doorway, just like always. But tonight, even that small detail felt different to her. Leo ran up and wrapped both arms tightly around her waist. She hugged him back just as tight, holding back tears. "Leo," she said softly, "starting tomorrow, your grandma doesn't work night shifts anymore." She paused, smiling through her tears. "We're going to have a house with a real yard." Leo's eyes widened with disbelief and pure joy. He hugged her even tighter, his small arms shaking slightly. But one task still remained before she could fully rest. She needed to return to her old store and settle things with Mitchell Vance. Confidence had quietly returned to her shoulders and her voice. She was no longer the woman who flinched at every unpaid bill. She changed out of her blue blazer into simple, comfortable clothes for the trip back. She wanted to walk into that old store looking like herself. She practiced a few calm words in her head during the long ride home. She did not want anger to guide what she said to Mitchell. How would Mitchell Vance react when she walked back through those store doors? Would he even recognize the woman standing in front of him now? At exactly 2:30 the next afternoon, Mitchell Vance sat behind his cluttered desk. He was preparing termination papers, ready to make an example out of Evelyn. He muttered to himself about discipline and rules as he signed each page. He felt certain he held all the power in this moment. The front door chimed as Evelyn walked calmly inside the store. Mitchell looked up and tossed a paper across his desk toward her. "You skipped your shift without permission," he said sharply. "Sign this, then pack up your things and leave." Evelyn did not flinch this time. She simply stood there, calm and quiet, waiting. At that exact moment, the front door opened again. Sarah Jenkins walked in, followed closely by a team in dark suits. Their polished shoes clicked against the worn tile floor. Mitchell's confident smirk slowly faded into confusion. Sarah stood tall and spoke in a clear, steady voice. "Mr. Vance, as of noon today, Apex Retail Group has purchased this entire store chain. This is your new regional operations director," Sarah continued, gesturing toward Evelyn. "Mrs. Evelyn Cross. You will now report directly to her." Mitchell Vance froze completely in his chair. His eyes moved slowly from Evelyn's calm face to the red company seal on the papers. He blinked hard, as if trying to wake himself from a nightmare. The papers in his hand began to tremble slightly. His face turned pale white in an instant. His lips trembled, but no words came out of his mouth. He did not shout. He did not argue or fight back at all. He simply lowered his head in total, silent defeat. He sat there shaking in front of the woman he had mocked just days before. Evelyn looked at him, with something closer to calm understanding than anger. Real power, she realized, was never about getting revenge on anyone. True power was about changing the broken system itself, once and for all. What would her very first decision be in this powerful new role? She thought briefly about all the years she had spent under Mitchell's harsh rules. She decided, right then, that no other worker should ever feel that small again. She remembered every cold word he had ever said to her, year after year. None of those words would ever define her future again. She turned and walked slowly out of the small office. The door clicked softly shut behind her. A few weeks later, Evelyn sat behind a clean desk in her new office. She picked up a pen and signed her very first official order. Sunlight poured through tall windows onto neat stacks of paper. A small framed photo of Leo already sat near her keyboard. The decision created an emergency customer fund of $50. It would be placed at every single register across 15 stores in the region. She gathered her new team and spoke to them plainly and warmly. "We do not build our business on people suffering," she said. "From now on, no employee pays out of their own pocket. No hungry customer walks away with nothing." Her team listened closely, some nodding, some still surprised by her quiet strength. Word of her new policy spread quickly through every store. Within a month, employees across the region began sending small thank you notes to her office. Many described customers who had been quietly helped through hard months. Evelyn read every single note carefully, keeping them in a small folder on her desk. Each one reminded her why she had said yes to this strange, life-changing chance. Some nights, she called other store managers personally just to check on tired night shift workers. She wanted every single one of them to feel seen, the way she once never did. That same evening, Evelyn walked hand in hand with Leo. They stepped together into their brand new home with a small, shaded backyard. The grass felt soft beneath their shoes. Leo laughed and ran ahead toward an old oak tree near the fence. From a distance, a quiet black car rolled slowly to a stop along the street. Through the tinted window, Shaquille O'Neal watched them with a soft, proud smile. He saw the pure joy lighting up both their faces in the fading evening light. Without a word, he drove gently away into the warm, glowing sunset. A deep and lasting peace settled into Evelyn's heart that night. Her quiet act of kindness had ended up saving her own life completely. It also opened a brighter, kinder future for thousands of other tired workers just like her. Sometimes kindness only costs a few small dollars and cents. Months later, Evelyn still kept her old cracked boots in a box at home. She never threw them away, no matter how much money she now earned. They reminded her of every long night shift, every skipped lunch, every quiet worry over unpaid bills. They reminded her exactly who she had been before everything changed. Leo grew taller that year, settling happily into his new school near their new home. He no longer worried about overdue tuition or empty cupboards at night. Sometimes, late in the evening, Evelyn would sit on her new back porch and think about that rainy night. She thought about a confused giant standing quietly at her register, his card declined. She never imagined that one small act, paying for a stranger's groceries, would change two lives forever. Kindness rarely announces itself loudly before it changes everything. But human dignity, once restored, is worth more than any amount of money. Would you be brave enough to offer that same kindness the way Evelyn once did?